The galaxy had always seen Earth as the quiet corner where nothing important happened. For thousands of years, alien civilizations traded, fought wars, and built empires while humans were still learning to make fire. When Earth finally joined the Galactic Council in 2157, most species treated humanity like children playing dress-up at an adult meeting. They smiled politely, patted humans on the head, and whispered among themselves about how cute it was that these young creatures thought they belonged among the stars. But the Zephyrians made a critical mistake. They underestimated what happens when you push humans too far. When their war fleet surrounded Earth and demanded surrender, expecting the primitive species to bow down like all the others, they had no idea they were about to witness something that would change the galaxy forever. What started as another routine conquest would become the moment when humanity showed the universe exactly what they were made of, and why you should never ever doubt the species that climbed from caves to stars in just a few thousand years. Captain Sarah Chun stared at the massive holographic display in the command center of Luna Station. 12 Zephyrian dreadnoughts hung in space around Earth like vultures waiting for prey to die. Each ship was 3 times larger than humanity's biggest warship, their dark metal hulls glinting with weapon ports that could crack a planet's surface. "They're demanding an answer in 6 hours," reported Lieutenant Martinez, his voice tight with worry. "Complete surrender, or they'll demonstrate their power on our major cities." Sarah's jaw clenched. The Zephyrians were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, ruling over 47 star systems with an iron fist. Their empire had crushed dozens of younger civilizations, adding their worlds to their collection like stamps in a book. Now they wanted Earth. "What does the Galactic Council say?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Nothing," Martinez replied bitterly. "They're calling it an internal matter between sovereign species." Translation: they don't want to anger the Zephyrians over some upstart humans. Sarah wasn't surprised. In the 5 years since humanity joined the Council, they'd been treated like junior members at best, ignored completely at worst. The older species saw humans as children who'd stumbled into space technology too quickly. They had fancy ships and big dreams, but no real power or respect. Admiral Torres entered the command center, his weathered face grim. "I just got off a call with Earth Command. The President wants to fight, but our fleet..." He shook his head. 37 ships against their 12. "It sounds good until you remember that each of their ships outguns 5 of ours." "So we surrender?" Sarah asked, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "The Council is pressuring us to. They say it's better to live under Zephyrian rule than to be wiped out completely." Torres sat heavily in his chair. "They keep reminding us that the Zephyrians are reasonable conquerors. They'll let us keep our culture, our local governments. We'll just be subjects." Sarah stared at the enemy ships on the display. Subjects? After everything humanity had fought through, the wars, the famines, the long climb from caves to cities to stars, they were supposed to bow down and become someone else's pets. "Admiral," she said quietly, "what if there was another option?" Torres looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we don't fight them ship to ship? What if we fight them the human way?" "Sarah, this isn't some war movie. We can't just..." "No, listen." Sarah's eyes were bright with a dangerous idea. "Every species in the galaxy fights the same way. Big ships, big guns, face-to-face battles in space. They've done it for thousands of years. But humans, we've always been different. We're the species that survived ice ages and plagues. We're the ones who turned losing into winning so many times that it became our specialty." Martinez leaned forward. "What are you thinking, Captain?" Sarah pointed at the display. "Look at their formation. Perfect symmetry, maximum firepower coverage, textbook space warfare. It's exactly what any military academy would teach. And it's exactly what they expect us to try to break through with our ships." Sarah's smile was sharp as a knife. "But what if we don't use ships at all?" Torres frowned. "Sarah, you're not making sense." "Admiral," Do you remember what happened when the British Navy tried to stop American smugglers in the 1700s? Or when the Soviet Union thought they could hold Afghanistan? Or when everyone said the Vietnamese couldn't possibly defeat a superpower? Understanding began to dawn on Torres's face. Guerrilla warfare. But Sarah, this is space. There's nowhere to hide. No jungle to disappear into. Isn't there? Sarah brought up a new display showing the solar system. Look around us, Admiral. Thousands of asteroids, abandoned mining stations, derelict ships, space debris from 50 years of construction. The Zephyrians see empty space. I see the perfect battlefield for a species that learned to win by being smarter, not stronger. The command center fell silent as everyone stared at the display. Sarah continued, her voice growing more confident. We don't need to defeat their fleet in open battle. We need to make them understand that conquering humanity isn't worth the cost. We make them bleed for every inch. Make them wonder if there's a human hiding behind every asteroid. Make them paranoid about every piece of space junk that drifts too close to their ships. Even if that worked, Torres said slowly, the Council would never approve. They'd say we're being reckless, endangering other species. Then we don't ask the Council, Sarah said simply. We ask Earth. 2 hours later, Sarah stood in the communication center of Luna Station, facing a camera that would broadcast her words to every human settlement in the solar system. Behind her, through the massive viewing window, the Zephyrian fleet waited like sleeping giants. Citizens of Earth, Luna, Mars, and the outer colonies, she began, her voice steady and clear. Today we face a choice that will define our species forever. We can surrender to the Zephyrians and become subjects in someone else's empire, or we can show the galaxy what humanity is really made of. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. I won't lie to you. If we fight, some of us will die. The Zephyrians have bigger ships, better weapons, and thousands of years of experience conquering other worlds. By every logical measure, we should surrender. Sarah's expression hardened. But humanity has never cared much about logic. We're the species that looked at an endless ocean and decided to cross it in wooden boats. We're the people who saw the sky and decided we belonged among the stars. We've faced extinction a dozen times in our history, and every single time, we've found a way to survive and grow stronger. She gestured toward the enemy fleet. The Zephyrians think they know us. They think we're just another young species that will roll over when faced with superior force. They've conquered 47 worlds this way, and they expect us to be number 48. Her voice rose, filled with the fire that had carried humanity from caves to starships. But they've made one critical mistake. They've never faced a species that turned losing into an art form. They've never fought people who see impossible odds as just another Tuesday. They don't understand that when you corner a human, you don't get surrender. You get ingenuity, determination, and the kind of stubborn refusal to quit that has carried us through every dark age our species has ever known. The communication center was dead silent, everyone hanging on her words. So here's what we're going to do, Sarah continued. We're going to show the Zephyrians and the entire galaxy that humanity doesn't bow down. We're going to fight them in a way they've never seen before, using tactics they've never faced, with weapons they won't see coming until it's too late. She leaned closer to the camera. This is our moment. This is when we prove that the species that climbed from mud to stars in a few thousand years isn't going to stop now. This is when we show the universe that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our ships or our guns. It's our refusal to accept defeat. Sarah straightened, her voice ringing with absolute conviction. To every human listening to this message, we're not just fighting for our freedom. We're fighting for our future, for our children's future, and for the right to stand as equals among the stars. The Zephyrians want to make us subjects. Let's show them why that's the worst mistake they've ever made. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, volunteers from across the solar system were signing up for what the media quickly dubbed Operation Spite. Because, as one Mars colonist put it, humanity was about to show the universe exactly how spiteful humans could be when pushed too far. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading expert in asteroid mining, became the unlikely architect of humanity's war plan. Forget everything you know about space battles, she told the gathered volunteers in Luna Station's main hangar. We're not fighting their fleet. We're fighting their assumptions. She brought up a holographic display of the solar system, highlighting thousands of small objects drifting through space. For 50 years, we've been mining asteroids, building stations, and leaving behind equipment. What the Zephyrians see as debris, we see as resources. Every old mining laser, every abandoned construction drone, every piece of scrap metal becomes a weapon in the right hands. Commander Jake Thompson, formerly of Earth's Special Forces, nodded grimly. Asymmetric warfare in space. We make them afraid of every shadow, every piece of floating junk, every signal they can't immediately identify. Exactly, Dr. Vasquez said. We turn their strength into a weakness. Those massive ships, they can't maneuver quickly. Those powerful weapons, useless against targets too small to hit. That perfect formation, it becomes a prison when they can't tell friend from foe. The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity. Small teams of humans would hide throughout the solar system, using modified mining equipment, construction drones, and improvised weapons to harass the Zephyrian fleet. They wouldn't try to destroy the massive ships. Instead, they'd make the Zephyrians' lives miserable in 1,000 small ways. Death by 1,000 cuts, Sarah explained to Admiral Torres. We jam their communications, sabotage their supply lines, make them jump at every sensor ghost. We make them understand that holding this system will cost them more than it's worth. Torres looked at the tactical display, showing hundreds of small human teams scattered across millions of cubic kilometers of space. It's insane, Sarah. You're talking about fighting a space battle with mining equipment and construction tools. Desperate times, Admiral. Besides, Sarah's grin was fierce. When has humanity ever let impossible odds stop us? The operation began 3 hours before the Zephyrian deadline. The first strike came from what appeared to be a piece of space debris drifting too close to their flagship. The debris was actually a modified construction drone packed with industrial explosives and guided by Maria Santos, a construction worker from the Belt colonies who'd volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. The explosion didn't destroy the Zephyrian ship, but it did something more valuable. It announced to the galaxy that humanity wasn't surrendering quietly. The blast was seen by news crews from a dozen species, broadcasting live coverage of what they'd expected to be a routine conquest. This is Griktar Vex reporting for Galactic News Network. The insectoid journalist chittered into his camera. What we're witnessing here is unprecedented. The humans appear to be attacking the Zephyrian fleet with construction equipment. More strikes followed in rapid succession. Tommy Chun, a teenager from Mars, used his family's asteroid mining ship to fire concentrated mining lasers at Zephyrian sensor arrays. Rebecca Walsh, a freight pilot, rammed her cargo hauler into a Zephyrian supply ship, taking out their food production facility. Every attack was small, seemingly insignificant, but together they began to add up. Admiral Zektar of the Zephyrian fleet watched from his command bridge as another piece of debris exploded against his ship's hull. The damage was minimal, but the psychological effect was growing. His crew jumped at every sensor reading, every piece of floating metal that drifted too close. Status report, he growled to his second-in-command. Minor hull damage to ships 7 and 11. We've lost 3 sensor arrays, 2 communication relays, and our primary food processor. No casualties yet, but the younger Zephyrian hesitated. But what? Sir, the crew is getting nervous. Every piece of space junk could be hiding humans. Every shadow could contain enemies. They're starting to see threats everywhere. Zektar's mandibles clicked in frustration. In 40 years of conquest, he'd never faced anything like this. Other species fought honorably, ship to ship, accepting defeat when outgunned. These humans were fighting like insects swarming from every direction, too small to swat effectively. "Double the sensor sweeps," he ordered. "I want every piece of debris in this system identified and cataloged." "Sir, that will take weeks. There are thousands of objects." "Then it takes weeks," Zektar roared. "I will not be made a fool of by these primitives." But the humans weren't done. Phase 2 of their plan was just beginning. Dr. Vasquez had realized something the Zephyrians hadn't. Their fleet, for all its power, depended on a complex supply chain. Food, fuel, ammunition, spare parts, all of it had to come from somewhere. And in space, supply lines were vulnerable. "Hit their logistics," she told the volunteer teams scattered throughout the system. "Don't try to destroy their warships. Destroy everything that keeps their warships running." The attacks intensified. Human teams struck at automated supply drones, fuel depots, and communication relayers with surgical precision. They used everything from modified mining charges to improvised electromagnetic pulse weapons built from construction equipment. Captain Yuki Tanaka, piloting a one-person mining pod, managed to infiltrate a Zephyrian supply convoy by disguising her ship as space debris. When she got close enough, she detonated a modified fusion torch, taking out 6 supply ships in a chain reaction that lit up the asteroid belt like a small sun. The galaxy watched in amazement as updates flooded the news networks. Species that had dismissed humanity as irrelevant suddenly found themselves glued to their screens, watching David fight Goliath with mining equipment and pure human stubbornness. "This is extraordinary," breathed Ambassador Quell Nix of the Christine Empire. "The humans are actually holding their ground against the Zephyrians. How is this possible?" On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Zektar was asking himself the same question. His fleet had taken minimal damage, but his supply situation was becoming critical. Every replacement part had to be escorted by warships. Every fuel shipment required fighter cover. His crews were exhausted from constant alert status, jumping at every sensor ghost. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human commander. Put it through." Sarah Chen's face appeared on the main screen, her expression calm and confident. Behind her, through Luna Station's viewing window, the Zephyrian fleet was clearly visible. "Admiral Zektar," she said politely, "I hope you're enjoying your stay in our solar system." Zektar's mandibles clicked angrily. "Human, you are merely delaying the inevitable. Surrender now, and we will be merciful." "I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Admiral. You see, we've been having this conversation with the Galactic Council, and they've been quite interested in our little conflict." Sarah's smile was sharp. "It seems that watching humans fight a guerrilla war in space has been very educational for a lot of species. Governments across the galaxy are suddenly wondering what would happen if they had to face similar tactics. Some of them are even asking their own military advisors about vulnerabilities in their own supply chains." Zektar felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything, Admiral. I'm stating a fact. In the last 72 hours, 3 species have formally requested that the Galactic Council provide them with detailed tactical analyses of our engagement. 2 more have asked for military advisors to review their own defensive strategies. And the Altarian Republic has just announced a new military doctrine based on human-style asymmetric warfare." The Zephyrian Admiral stared at the screen in horror. "You're teaching them our weaknesses." "I'm not teaching anyone anything," Sarah replied calmly. "I'm just demonstrating that there's more than one way to fight a war. Every species in the galaxy has been doing it the same way for thousands of years: big ships, big guns, traditional tactics. But humans, we've always been innovators." She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Admiral, how long do you think your empire can survive when every species you've conquered starts wondering if they could fight back the same way we are? When they realize that your massive fleets are actually vulnerabilities, not strengths." Zektar's worst fears were being realized. The humans weren't just fighting for their own freedom, They were accidentally creating a revolution in military thinking that could spread across the galaxy. Every species watching this conflict was learning lessons that could be turned against the Zephyrian Empire. "What do you want?" he asked through clenched mandibles. "Simple," Sarah said. "You leave our system. You never come back. And in exchange, we stop demonstrating just how effective human warfare can be." "And if I refuse?" Sarah's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Then we keep fighting, Admiral. We turn your conquest into the most expensive military operation in galactic history. We make sure every species in the galaxy sees exactly how to hurt you. And eventually, when your own people start asking why you're spending so much time and resources on one small system, you'll have to explain how you let a bunch of primitives make fools of the mighty Zephyrian fleet." The transmission ended, leaving Zektar alone with his thoughts and a bridge full of nervous officers. 3 hours later, long-range sensors detected the Zephyrian fleet beginning to withdraw from the solar system. "They're leaving?" Lieutenant Martinez reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "All 12 ships are moving toward the hyperspace limit." Sarah Chun stood in Luna Station's command center, watching the enemy ships dwindle to points of light on the display. Around her, the station erupted in cheers, but she remained quiet, thoughtful. "You did it, Captain," Admiral Torres said, clapping her on the shoulder. "You actually did it." "We did it," Sarah corrected. "All of us. Every volunteer who flew into danger with nothing but mining equipment and determination. Every person who refused to accept that humanity should bow down to someone else's empire." She gestured at the display showing the retreating fleet. "But this is just the beginning. Word of what happened here is going to spread across the galaxy. Other species are going to start asking questions, thinking about their own situations, wondering what's possible." Torres nodded slowly. "You realize what you've done, don't you? You've changed how the galaxy thinks about warfare, about power, about what it means to be strong." Sarah smiled, but it was a tired smile. "Maybe. Or maybe we just reminded everyone of something they'd forgotten, that the strongest weapon isn't always the biggest gun. Sometimes it's just the refusal to give up." Over the following weeks, news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had been conquered by the Zephyrians generations ago began to whisper among themselves, sharing stories and ideas. The Altarian Republic formally announced their new military doctrine. The Christine Empire quietly began reassessing their own defensive strategies. More importantly, the Galactic Council suddenly found themselves dealing with a very different kind of humanity. The species that had been dismissed as junior members for 5 years was now being courted by major powers eager to understand their military innovations. "It's remarkable," Ambassador Quelnix said during an emergency council session. "In a matter of days, the humans have completely changed the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy." Council leader Vorthake nodded gravely. "The Zephyrian Empire has ruled through fear and superior firepower for millennia. But the humans have demonstrated that there are other ways to fight, other paths to victory. This knowledge cannot be contained." He looked around the council chamber at representatives of dozens of species. "I propose that we formally recognize humanity as a full member of this council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. They have proven that they belong among us not as junior partners, but as equals." The vote was unanimous. Back on Earth, Sarah Chun stood in her apartment in New Geneva, looking up at the stars through her window. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian fleet was limping home, their reputation damaged and their empire suddenly vulnerable. Somewhere else, species that had been conquered long ago were having conversations that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. Her communication device chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as Admiral Torres Luna Station. "Sarah," the message began, "you need to see the latest intelligence reports. The Kethran resistance has just struck 3 Zephyrian supply depots using tactics they learned from our engagement. The Vorthan Republic is requesting military advisors to help them develop human-style defensive strategies. And intelligence says there are at least 6 other species preparing similar operations against their own oppressors. Sarah smiled, remembering her words to Admiral Zektar. She'd told him that humans were innovators, but she hadn't fully understood the implications herself. The message continued, "The galaxy is changing, Sarah. What you started here is spreading faster than anyone anticipated. Command wants to know if you're interested in heading up a new department, strategic innovation and asymmetric warfare. Apparently, everyone wants to learn how humans think about impossible problems." She looked back up at the stars, thinking about all the species out there who had accepted defeat because they thought they had no choice. All the worlds that had surrendered because conventional wisdom said they couldn't win. "Well," she said to herself, "I guess it's time to teach the galaxy what happens when you tell humans something is impossible." Her reply to Torres was short and simple. "When do I start?" 6 months later, the Zephyrian Empire formally announced the liberation of 12 conquered worlds, citing changing strategic priorities and the need to focus on internal development. Nobody was fooled. Everyone knew the real reason was that holding on to conquered territory had become too expensive when every occupied species had learned how to fight back the human way. The Galactic Council established the Human Strategic Innovation Center on Luna Station, with Captain Sarah Chun as its first director. Species from across the galaxy sent their brightest military minds to study what the media had dubbed the human method. The art of turning weakness into strength, of finding victory in impossible situations, of refusing to accept defeat even when logic said you should. But perhaps the most important change was simpler and more profound. Throughout the galaxy, on worlds that had been conquered and species that had been oppressed, a new phrase began to appear in conversations, in resistance meetings, in the quiet moments when people dared to dream of freedom. What would the humans do? It was a question that changed everything. Because the answer was always the same: humans would find a way. They would turn their disadvantages into advantages, their desperation into determination, their backs against the wall moments into their finest hours. The galaxy had doubted humanity, dismissing them as upstarts who had stumbled into space too quickly. They treated humans like children playing at being adults, not understanding that this young species had already survived more impossible odds than most civilizations faced in their entire histories. But humanity's response to that doubt echoed across the stars, carrying a message that resonated on every world where the oppressed looked up at the night sky and wondered if freedom was possible. Never underestimate the species that learned to dream of flying while they were still living in caves. Never dismiss the people who turned curiosity into spacecraft and stubbornness into starlight. And never, ever make the mistake of thinking that just because humans are young, they don't know how to fight. Because when you doubt humanity, they don't just prove you wrong. They teach the entire galaxy how to prove you wrong too. The response echoed across the stars, carried by the light of distant suns to every corner of the galaxy. And on 1,000 worlds where beings had accepted their fate and bowed to superior force, that echo became a whisper, then a voice, then a shout. What would the humans do? The answer changed everything.